Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Lerone P. Brooks, and I serve as the curator of the African American Art History Initiative, or AHI, at the Getty Research Institute. It's an honor to gather with you today for this important conversation about the editorial legacy of the Johnson Publishing Company, an institution whose visionary work helped shape the cultural, political, and aesthetic landscape of Black life in the United States and beyond. Founded in 1942 by John H. Johnson and Eunice Johnson, Johnson Publishing Company was responsible for Ebony, Jet, and a vast array of publications and visual materials that not only chronicled the African American experience, but also actively affirmed Black identity, beauty, and social progress. Its archive is one of the great visual records of the 20th century, an unparalleled chronicle of Black joy, struggle, creativity, and self-determination. In 2019, the Getty Research Institute and the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture became co-stewards of the Johnson Publishing Company archive, an archive of over 4 million photographs and prints spanning 7 decades of history. Ours is one of the most significant archival partnerships of our time, built on a shared commitment to preservation, access, and public scholarship. Together, we are stewarding this extraordinary collection so that future generations of artists, researchers, and communities may draw from its depth and power. This work aligns with the Museum of the Getty, led by President and CEO Kathleen Fleming, to advance the understanding and preservation of the world's most important cultural heritages. At the Getty Research Institute, that mission takes shape through our collections, exhibitions, residencies, and research programs. The African American Art History Initiative, launched in 2018, is central to that mission. AHI is dedicated to expanding the historical record by supporting the study, documentation, and archive building of African American and African diasporic art histories. Through acquisitions, artists, partnerships, public programs, and institutional collaborations, we work to create lasting infrastructures of knowledge and care for Black cultural production. Today's webinar is part of that ongoing work. As we examine the editorial legacies of Johnson Publishing, its languages, its images, politics, aesthetic strategies, we celebrate the people and practices that made Black self-representation both powerful and possible. We also reaffirm our shared responsibility to preserve and activate these histories with care, rigor, and imagination. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to introduce Skylar Hearn, Special Collections Archivist for the Johnson Publishing Company Archive at the Getty Research Institute. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lerone, for your introduction. And thank you all for being here with us today. We welcome you to Backstage, an unfurling of the Johnson Publishing Company, Ebony's editorial legacy. Next slide, please. It is my pleasure to be here with you to moderate this conversation between my esteemed colleagues, Raquel Flores-Clemons, archivist and head of the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection of Afro-American History and Literature at the Carter G. Woodson Chicago Public Library, Gabrielle Dudley, archivist, educator, and assistant director of public services at Rose Library at Emory University, and Kheir Fakhreldin, University Archivist and Assistant Professor of the Gwendolyn Brooks Library at Chicago State University. Next slide, please. We are gathered here this afternoon in conversation to highlight the incredible trailblazers who first served as editors for Ebony magazine, as well as to highlight the 80th anniversary of Ebony magazine. Since deciding on the Ebony's editorial legacy theme, I have been drawn to think about how it is that we are able to craft our current existence as archivists, historians, information, media, and art professionals based on the groundwork of the legacies of our ancestors and predecessors who served in the same professions. There is no period in history, according to person centered and first person perspectives, that discuss overcoming challenges without discussing the benefits of rewards and success. The Johnson Publishing Company Ebony's editorial team comprised of national and international editors who led a team of journalists, artists, designers, and illustrators, and so on unwaveringly with tireless commitment and dedication to exemplify how the power to self-define and document and control one's own narratives are brought into fruition. During one of the most defining seminal periods of the 20th century, in the magic month of November in 1945, Ebony magazines hit the newsstands and impressed the masses. At Ebony's 10th year anniversary mark in 1955, the magazine reached 500,000 readership, was the most quoted and reprinted publication in America, distributed in 15 foreign countries, and became a household word all over the world. Influenced by the Johnson Magic, a reference to John H. Johnson, president and publisher of Johnson Publishing Company, by 1955, JPC had risen to be the largest Black-led and public-owned media company, which dominated the field of journalism and was recognized as a pioneer and leader in national advertising in Black publications. To boot, JPC was comprised of and operated by a Black publishing staff, photographers, illustrators, and so on, and led by a predominantly Black leadership team. JPC accomplished this through demonstrated and successfully strategic efforts to highlight, educate, and disseminate positive portrayals of African Americans in history, cultural heritage, politics, education, fashion and beauty, activism and movement work, celebrityism, as well as everyday life experiences and activities. The Johnson Publishing Company, as an economic powerhouse business, provided the space, which we now have also deemed as what's referred to as safe spaces, to provide a supportive environment that encouraged Black intellectual freedom and creativity to thrive, a revolutionary act and precursor to radical acts of employee well-being and care, combinations that allow for 75 years of a successful Black-led business. Will my esteemed colleagues please turn your cameras on? Thank you. Reflecting on this rich legacy as archivists and leaders in the field, will each of you give some background on yourselves, your respective repositories, and how you draw connections to the Ebony's editorial legacy? Beginning with Gabrielle, please.
Greetings, everyone. If you could go to the next slide, please. Greetings, everyone. I want to just say thank you so much to Lerone and to Skyla for those wonderful introductions and grounding to what we're doing today. So as Skyla mentioned, my name is Gabrielle Dudley, and I'm the Assistant Director of Public Services at the Rose Library at Emory University. And I want to just tell you all a little bit about how I came to be in this role in my journey to become an archivist. There are two things that really resonated with me. The first was the American Girl series. Meet Addie, based on Addie Walker, who was an enslaved young girl. And I discovered Addie when I was probably in maybe the third or fourth grade, and just seeing her resilience. But mostly it was because a teacher told me, well, more Black people own slaves than white people. And I was like, what? And so I ran home and I asked my dad to take me to the library so that I could look this up. And so that just started my little researcher and archivist heart going from there. And then as I got older, A Different World, based on the fictional HBCU Hillman College, really grounded me. And there was an episode in two episodes in particular, one where the character Freddie finds evidence of the Underground Railroad at Hillman College, and then also where another character, Whitley Gilbert, discovers that her own family owns slaves. So it was those two things that sort of set me on my path to become an archivist. Next slide, please. But today, I'm here to talk mostly about Dr. Lerone Bennett Jr. Lerone Bennett is one of the collections that we have at Rose Library. We are actually really proud to have the Lerone Bennett papers there. And if you're not familiar with the Rose Library, one of our major collecting areas is African American history and culture, and the Bennett papers fits very nicely within that collecting scope. So the Bennett papers that we have at Rose Library are about 37 boxes of materials. And the materials that we have within our collections are mostly his research files for the various books that he wrote, and then also some of the research that he did as a journalist and editor at Ebony. So one of the things that I really want to highlight about the collection at Rose Library is the research files for, I think, one of probably his most well-known book, Beyond the Mayflower, which was published in 1962. And this work really grew out of the essays and articles that he regularly wrote for Ebony magazine. And this book really traces the Black American experience from West Africa to the period that this book was published. And it's gone through several editions, and each one sort of updating it. And it was highly regarded, and I think still highly regarded as the best book about the history of the Black experience. And so I know other colleagues will probably tell you a little bit more about Dr. Bennett, but I just want to highlight also another part that's within his collection. Bennett went from Morehouse College to the Atlanta Daily World, which was a Black newspaper in the Atlanta area. He was there for a couple of years before he went to Jet and then to Ebony magazine. And I think that it was really in the pages of Ebony that he really first sought to educate Black readers about Black history and Black experiences. Next slide, please. And in our collection, it really highlights Dr. Bennett as both an intellectual, a scholar, but we see also glimpses, which I love because I'm also nosy. It shows us glimpses into his curiosities as a scholar. So we have writings, like I mentioned, the writings related to Beyond the Mayflower, but work that he did on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Benjamin Mays of Morehouse College, and also some speeches and things that he wrote and lots of correspondence. Next slide, please. And so, one of the things that we have a real incredible responsibility at the Rose Library, having the papers of the African American experience, and particularly Dr. Bennett. And so, one of the things that we try to make sure that we do is to actually activate the archives. So, here, this is actually one day in our reading room, and it was filled with undergraduate students from both Emory and Spelman College. And so it was really and I can talk about this later, but really a grant allowed us to have this catalyst to be able to activate our African American collections. Next slide, please. And then finally, not only through student work and in our reading room, but we try to activate our collections also through exhibitions. We have an exhibition space in Rose Library that rotates rather often, and oftentimes African American collections and subjects are the focus of it because that is one of our major collecting areas. So I will cede my time to the rest of my colleagues to talk about their institutions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kheir Fakhreldin. I'm the University Archivist and Assistant Professor at Chicago State University at the Gwendolyn Brooks Library. CSU is a predominantly Black institution on the south side of Chicago. It was founded in 1867 as the Cook County Normal School, and in this century has been Chicago Teachers College, Chicago State College, and now Chicago State University, and has always served working class students. I've been working full-time in archives since 2017. I had a very indirect path to becoming an archivist, but what sparked it for me was when my mom took me on a trip to Washington, D.C. When I was 13, and we went to the National Archives and took a behind-the-scenes tour, and I was able to hold Richard Nixon's resignation letter. And that's still there. That's behind glass now and everything, but that was kind of what sparked it all for me. Um, our collections are open to the public, and if you're in Chicago and you'd like to do some research here, we'd love to have you. Our campus is at 95th and King Drive in the Roseland neighborhood, and you can email me directly at kfakhrel@csu.edu or csu_archives@csu.edu, or call me at 773-995-3843. We have a lot of collections related to important Chicago figures such as legislators, judges, writers, and attorneys, as well as the history of the university. Next slide, please. So we also have this Lerone Bennett collection now. I don't know the full details of what went to Emory and what came to us, but my understanding is that our material was 87 boxes that were in Bennett's office at the JPC that had been in a storage locker. And the storage locker's buyer, by great fortune, was a friend of our professor Lionel Kimball, who, when he contacted him, said, yes, absolutely. This, knew that it had tremendous research value. And so it was able to come to us here at Chicago State. And the collection's partially processed. We have a finding aid, and it's open to researchers. Next slide. So it's now 116 boxes. I'd say about a third of which are fully processed. It sounds that, like the Emory collection, we have a lot of correspondence, business records, greeting cards, note cards from research, 4 boxes of just note cards from research. His publications, other people's books, as well as a lot of videotapes and other media, and boxes of honorary degrees and plaques and awards that he got. We have manuscript materials from before the Mayflower, as well as The Shaping of Black America and Forced into Glory, which was his late work on Abraham Lincoln. I can talk at length about more of the highlights of the collection, but one thing I really wanted to share specifically was this poem, Lerone Bennett. It's an unpublished poem by Gwendolyn Brooks Our library here at CSU is named the Gwendolyn Brooks Library. She taught here for about 10 years. And I just wanted to share this poem. It's titled Lerone Bennett. To Lerone Bennett, born in Clarksdale, Mississippi in 1928, multi-talented, influential, enacting, and involved. Literature-wise and life-wise, he walks warmly and curingly among the earnest and the enduring, among the brainwashed, the malformed, the squeezed, among the bewildered and indistinct. In his deft and serious hands, he takes history, shows us the underside, whether we like it or not. He energizes those who veer to vintage, loot last night, hug old graves, root up decomposition, warm it with a kiss. Bell clarifier, adjuster of black translations and reductions, Gwendolyn Brooks. And then her note on this paper. Could I have the next slide? Hi, Lerone. This is your citation. They want them brief. They hintingly sent me samples, the longest of which was 87 words. Well, yours is longer and should be. Congratulations. With warm gratitude forever, Gwen. And we have so many items in this collection that show the extent of his network. There are a lot of interesting figures in it. So, yeah, with that, I'll pass it along to Raquel.
You're muted, Raquel. No, you're still. There we go.
Can
Okay,
you
here
hear
we
me?
go.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I also want to make sure I get my timer on because, as my esteemed colleagues have already indicated, these legacies are so incredible and really could go on and on. So I also want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. But again, thank you so much for having me here and inviting me to be a part of this program and for giving us all space to continue to uplift the amazing legacy of Johnson Publishing Company. As Skylar has already shared, I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Raquel Flores-Clemons, and I am the head of the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection. It's truly an honor to steward this collection, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later for those who are not familiar with the collection. And today I'll be discussing JPC's representation in the Harsh collection, just because of JPC's, legacy and impact on our culture locally, nationally, and abroad. Its fingerprints are everywhere in the collection, even in non-JPC related materials and collections. And so I'll be specifically talking about the two personal papers of that we have of JPC editors, Bell Thompson and Ben Burns. These collections are two of three collections that we have of former JPC staff. We also have the papers of Doris Saunders, who was an amazing information professional. I call her a data scientist because a lot of her work as an information professional really was very seminal in the early success of JPC as well. But we're focusing on the editorial staff today. And thank you so much for these prompts as well, Skylar, because as a Black woman, as an archivist, and as a native Chicagoan, it's an honor to steward these legacies just because of proximity to them and how much they were influential in my own personal journey into this profession. Next slide, please. And in reflecting on this, both the tangible and intangible ways that JPC gave this fuller, and I like to say a fuller and more accurate account of Black culture, and both again locally and globally. I'm reminded of a former colleague, the late Dr. Will Patterson, who was an educator and innovator and visionary clinical associate professor at University of Illinois, a part of their College of Engineering, Technology, and Entrepreneurship Center. And I had the great honor of being the University Archivist at Chicago State before Kheir. And during a National Library Week program, he came to talk to us about this paradigm that he developed called the Heterogeneous Universe. And the reason why it came to mind is because what he shared in that, he specifically cited Johnson Publishing Company and that legacy and what John Johnson had done as a part of inspiration in his work as a tech entrepreneur, and how Johnson Publishing had an incredible impact on various things about Black culture that's not always associated with Black culture, particularly in technology, and how Johnson Publishing Company and the media that it produced as a tool that disseminated information about Black people and Black culture worldwide, that in many ways affronted negative connotations and stereotypes about Black people, but really gave a more accurate and fuller account about Black life that include Black joy and Black success, and demonstrating what we are and what we can do and things to attain to. And so in this paradigm, it represents, he stated that it represents unique knowledge and creativity born and cultivated and already exists within what people may call the ghetto, or what is really underrepresented, under-resourced, and undervalued environments. And it's the people, places, and spaces that are undervalued, underestimated, and marginalized, but genius is already within us, and just those confined spaces that are placed on marginalized communities just up the ante on us being just innovative. Those spaces become laboratories for innovation. And so in this paradigm, people can have different assignments. And so I identify as a connector, identifying all these various histories and showing shared narratives, shared similarities, and also a culture keeper, preserving these cultures and these cultural things about us, and sharing it with the public, sharing it out and making them accessible. And so, and also too, as a hip hop head, I'm always I'm always thinking about things in the way of the genius of a DJ. How can we see these things and reframe them and represent them so that people can connect with them more? And so, and in this paradigm, there's cultural wealth and also tangible wealth that is created that oftentimes Black folks are not always able to benefit from. But one thing we can say about JPC is that the dollar circulated because of the many ways and the many things that came out of JPC that impacted the community, again, tangibly and intangibly, just being a space for Black businesses to advertise. That's like a huge thing, and how that impacted the built environment, especially in Chicago. Next slide, please. So, I want to talk a little bit about our collection, so you'll have an understanding of these collections in this framework, or in this context rather. And so the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection is a large collection of African American history and literature in the Midwest, and the second largest of its kind in the country. Is named after Vivian G. Harsh, who was one of Chicago Public Library's first librarian. I like to call her the people's librarian because she was everyone's librarian. Many noted African Americans in Chicago and that grew up in the Bronx area, that was their librarian, including John A. Johnson. So the Hall branch, which she led, was the neighborhood, the home library of many noted African Americans. And our collection strengths, we collect in many areas, but our collection strengths are in Black Chicago Renaissance. And I have a picture here, a gathering of a Black Chicago gathering, and many people related to that era that's coming from the Marion Perkins papers, strong in civil rights, politics, and business and labor. And I have an image of from the Bernetta Halbert papers. And then we are very strong in journalism, media, and publishing. And of course, this is very much the context in which these two collections are. Especially we have the Abbott Sensac papers as well, which is the Defender legacy. And both of these editors had connections, had worked for at some point with the Defender as well. And so I just love all these different connections as, again, being the connector, right? Next slide. So Bell Thompson was, again, a powerhouse, and scholarship is really bubbling up about her history and legacy right now. She may not have gotten her full flowers at the time that she was active, but there are a lot of scholars that are really recognizing just how similar she was to JPC's legacy. We've had her papers since the 80s. She was one of her papers, as well as Ben Burns' papers, were very seminal in the growth of that media, Black journalism and publishing track in the archive. The 108 boxes, over 96 linear feet, lots of great material, correspondence, subject research files. She kept meticulous notes on her journeys to various places across the globe. And she advanced to she was the associate editor for Negro Digest. That's how she started with Johnson Publishing, and then also was a contributor to Ebony, and then helped shape both those magazines. She advanced to co-managing editor of Ebony in '51, and she oversaw the writing and the staff, guided the editorial direction of those publications. She became an international editor in '64 and led the launch of Ebony Africa as its managing editor. So that introduced the publication to the continent and made a deeper connections between the audience here as well as the continent and I like to say the diaspora overall. She authored 2 books, her autobiography, American Daughter, which was a response to Richard Wright's native son, and that places her in that Black Renaissance era in conversation. And she also wrote Africa, Land of My Father, and both chronicle race, identity, and global Black experiences. Next slide, please. And now we have Ben Burns. Ben Burns was, he identified as a Black newspaper man in everything but skin color, which also drew some criticism from folks, as you can imagine. The papers that we have are 46 archival boxes, over 177 linear feet. Again, lots of reference files. And in his files that we also have photographs by Gordon Parks. Gordon Parks accompany him and John Johnson on a trip to Haiti. Also in Bell Thompson's papers, we have some great photos of from Monetta's fleet as well. I forgot to mention that. He was politically radical, and he was the first executive editor of Ebony. And I mentioned his politics because he found a safe space, in JPC. And so I think that's a testament to, you mentioned something in the prompt, Skylar, about creating the safe space, how Black spaces often create safe spaces for other folks. And so that's also a part of his journey as well. He advocated for racial equality and through the press. And again, he identified in many ways with the Black experience. And some would say, like in our current context, he was an ally. He left Johnson Publishing in '54 because he did have editorial conflicts with John Johnson. And in his autobiography, Nitty Gritty, A White Editor in Black Journalism, he details that. And so the collection that we have also gives more insight into that as well. So that's what I have for those 2 collections. I invite you all to come and check them out. These are fully processed collections and open to the public, and looking forward to seeing you all. Hopefully you all will come and check them out. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your presentations and for sharing a little bit about your backgrounds and how you came into the field, what intrigued you and led you here, as well as, like the connections that you have to JPC and to the editors, our trailblazing predecessors. Here. And, just thank you so much for that. I was really excited about, this conversation because, being a Chicagoan, there's the part where, you can just run into someone at a grocery store, which is exactly what happened with Dr. Lerone Bennett. And, and just being in a position to like live your history and amongst like, our elders and to look upon them in terms of the ways that, they have like impacted and influenced us within our own careers, but thinking more largely about the contributions that they've made, which has enhanced our society and our world at large. And so, I think about it, of course, in terms of, laying out like the historical structure and everything. And Raquel, you just ended with talking with us about Ben Burns. And, Burns was, of course, the first executive editor at JPC, at Ebony. And, ending around 1954-ish, if I'm not mistaken, 1945 to 1954. And then, there was overlap with he and Arabelle Thompson. I talk about them like they're my friends, like this first name basis. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But and then, there being overlap with so between Ben and Arabelle, and then again, between Arabelle and Lerone being co-managing editors. And so, I like for us to like open up this conversation, but Raquel, I do want to kind of start with you at this part of the conversation because I'm wondering if you will expound upon like specific highlights of Arabelle Thompson and Ben Burns as it relates to their influence in shaping of Ebony magazine.
Yes. So particularly for Arabelle, so one thing that that the record shows is that she was a quiet strength. She played by the rules, but she also documented her experience within the organization, and she strategized well to make sure she positioned herself to be in leadership because she had added value. She understood the environment. She understood what the written word can do in telling and shaping the stories of African Americans and also of Black people globally. And we get insight into for both collections. I feel like we get a little bit more insight into the culture of JPC with her collection. We have these wonderful photographs of like, different staff members and things of that nature. And also to the relationships that she built being in that role, but also how they also carried outside of that work. She was good colleagues with various, again, what we would think is who's who of Black Chicago history, of Black history in general. Gwendolyn Brooks, and I just love like all these connections because there's so many shared connections between all of our organizations. There's these great photos of Gwendolyn Brooks with her daughter, Nora Brooks Blakely. And as I was preparing for this, I came across one of the photos and I sent it to her. I was like, look at this, in this cute little petticoat. And it was so great. Her response was like, oh God, Aunt Arabelle. And that for me, I just love when that experience is just so grounded and just reminds you people are human beings and living their life. But also too, there's a lot of again, documentation about working there, and also too, she also wrote criticisms of the work environment as well, and I found that to be interesting. She also called out some of the weirdness in working relationships with Ben Burns, which is interesting as well. And so, but there's so many things in that collection that I'm having a hard time just picking one, as you can tell. But
absolutely.
But it's so much there. And the scholarship that's coming out engaging this collection is really, really incredible. So. And then as far as Ben Burns, again, it's similar things. There were controversies during his time, and again, you see that editorial, just insighting, if you will, and particularly around one of the instances that's often connected to him is him publishing something from Richard Wright that caused disagreement between him and John Johnson. And so there's documentation on that. And that's for me, that's very interesting because again, you get to have insight into individual people and, but also the environment as well. But also too, you have these, like I said, these really great photographs, just of different, the executive leadership of Johnson Publishing as well. And so you get more of insight into that, the higher level, if you will. So
yeah, definitely. And and especially like you said, them being able to reflect like these various perspectives, as well as, leading within the publications, and with Arabelle being the international editor, and her being able to include her own personal experiences of traveling abroad, but then also exposing readers to those experiences for people who may have not thought about that as an experience for themselves, like with her traveling throughout West Africa and bringing that information back. And with Ben Burns in terms of like, the different perspectives from political views, but also putting that in documentation and then again opening up this broader conversation through the publication with the readers. And so connecting in a way, Gabrielle and Kheir, I'm wondering how do you see shaping, excuse me, of Lerone Bennett's ideas and perspectives as having influenced the Johnson Publishing Company and Ebony magazine?
Should I go first? Okay. Um, well, what strikes me the most, when I'm going through it, and I learn something exciting every time I look through one of those boxes, is really, his network. And, it just gives me such a sense of the way that JPC was such an important force in Chicago and in media in the country generally. Um, Clearly it was just, such an important voice. Um, and I just want to say a little more about Lerone's network. He was a Morehouse classmate of Dr. King. Uh, and there's a lot of correspondence in the collection about when they were putting the King Center together. He worked extensively on making King's birthday a national holiday. And, there's that whole arc from when they were first starting to try to do that to then when it was finally achieved. Um, and it's amazing to see the documentation on that. He also tried to make Malcolm X's birthday a national holiday, was working toward that. And he was good friends with Harold Washington, the first black mayor of Chicago. And there's extensive material on the Washington campaign from 1983, which he was a big backer of. He was highly involved with Operation Push. We have like 5 really thick folders of material from the whole history of Operation Push. Um, and he was close friends also with Thomas N. Todd, who was one of the co-founders and whose collection we also have here at Chicago State. Was close friends with Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee, appeared on one of their television programs, and we have the material from like the agreement to be on that program and letters back and forth. There's a letter from them to Johnson Publishing Company's book division ordering a copy of the 10 books that Lerone Bennett had written to send as a gift to their children. Um, so, it just gave me such a great sense of how plugged in they were. Also close to Timuel Black, the historian, Haki Madhubuti, the poet and publisher. One thing I noticed just as I was, looking through this morning, there are a couple big folders of material on the bicentennial of the country and how Bennett wanted Black history to be a part of the bicentennial commemorations. And I thought that's so relevant this year as we're looking forward to the semi-quincentennial coming up next year, when people are really going to be looking at how things have changed, not just in the past 250 years, but even looking back to 1976 and understanding our most recent 50 years. So I'm eager to share those with researchers too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and Kara, I think I can just pick up,
yeah,
on, exactly that point about Black history. And I think, Skylar, your question was about sort of how Dr. Bennett influenced Ebony, but I think that Ebony and Johnson Publishing Company really influenced him. There was in the collection that we have, I mean, as Kheir mentioned before, there's so many plaques and things like that, but we also have all of these invitations. So there's people were inviting him all over the country to come and speak to them and their organizations, their cities about Black history. And one of the speeches that he was giving, he said, Morehouse will take care of Morehouse and their students. Spelman will take care of Spelman and their students, and Howard will take care of, their students. But like Ebony was here for the masses. He mentioned like Ebony was there for the janitors and for the bus drivers. And I think the collection really shows him taking that to heart and thinking about how can history be translated to the everyday person. And you see that through the correspondence that he's having, not only with all of those famous people and things that Kheir has mentioned, but with, I think, Ebony readers as well that are just trying to understand the place of the Black American experience within this larger American history. So I really think that Ebony's influence on Dr. Bennett is really seen within the collection. And of course, I definitely think that under his leadership, he was able to, have Ebony soar to new heights, especially when it comes to spreading, Black history to its readers.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Gabrielle. I like the way you were like, no, actually, let's look at it from this perspective, which is absolutely spot on, and it's just, I think that, all of their contributions, and of course, with Dr. Bennett being the longest or having the longest tenure there, just really speaks to, I think, the power in terms of what can be done when it is that, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when, we are in the position to then like craft our own narratives and disseminate this information in a way where I think, especially through Ebony magazine, it was done in such a way where it was palatable because, especially with Dr. Bennett, just releasing essays, and then compiling those essays into then what would become text, but I'm gonna stop there because we are at time for questions, but I really, really, really want to thank the three of you so much for your contributions to this conversation. This was invigorating and enlightening. And, as an archivist and researcher, I would love to be able to come to your repositories and conduct my own research, which I hope for our audience out there that you will be contacting Raquel, Kheir, and Gabrielle to do that as well and to learn more about these trailblazing individuals that we've spoken about this afternoon. And thank you all again for joining us. And we are going to open it up for questions. Okay, so I'll just read them in order. And the first one that we have here is from Marty Williams. I'm a photographer based in DC, and I grew up reading Ebony and Jet. I'm also a collector of books by and about Black photographers. I hope you all would strongly consider publishing a compilation book that would include photographs from the entire Johnson Publishing photo collection. If you were to publish such a book, I will buy at least 2 copies. Thank you in advance. Okay, so that was more of a comment. I'll go to the next from Deb Freeman. Is there any place where there might be archival information about Frida DeKnight, Ebony's food editor?
So we do not have a specific from a collection of the night, but there's an image of Frida DeKnight in the Bell Thompson papers, and then also both finding guides of both the Bell Thompson papers as well as the Ben Burns papers are online and easily searchable. So for anyone that has more questions about like other folks who we haven't mentioned in the presentation, that's a good starting point to identify materials about them.
And I'll just jump in and say that I believe that in our collection there is some correspondence with DeKnight, but I would have to like double check that. But I think there's a few letters in our collection for sure.
And then within our collection, there's representation of Frida DeKnight as well, which once our collection is processed, you'll be able to view photographs related to her and to her work with Johnson Publishing Company. The next, I think we have time for, we have time for a couple of more questions, so I'll just keep going. Do your respective archives also reveal a relationship or cross-sharing of information about Black history with Carter G. Woodson?
I'm sure that Carter G. Woodson was a major source for Bennett, but I would have to dig into the research notes and everything to see if I could find more on that specifically. I also wanted to answer one that disappeared when I answered it, asking if Before the Mayflower is still in print. It is, and I was actually able to get the audiobook on Hoopla from my local library. So yeah, it's very much still. Nicole Hannah-Jones cited it as really the inspiration for the 1619 project. She said that she was given a copy when she was a high school student, and that it really sparked her interest in Black history.
Yeah, and just one thing about the question about Carter G. Woodson. So Rose Library has Dr. Woodson's library, and I do know that in some of the speeches that Dr. Bennett gave, he did at least call the name of Dr. Woodson. But like Kheir, I would need to look deeper into the collection to be able to say that for sure.
Here at Harsh, not necessarily specifically in these two collections, but Carter G. Woodson is very, very important to the Harsh collection overall, just because of the history of Carter G. Woodson being in Chicago, founding Negro History Week here in Chicago at the Wabash YMCA, and so we have representation of that in the collection as well. Vivian G. Harsh was a colleague and was a part of that early group of folks that was a part of the Association of Negro Life and History, which is now Association of African American Life and History. And the Harsh is we're located at the Carter G. Woodson Regional Library to honor that history as well. And so it's more so connected with the history of the library and the Hall branch and things of that nature, but not specifically. We don't necessarily see that in these two collections.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions to us this afternoon. Again, thank you all for attending our presentation. I do apologize that we're not able to address everyone's questions because we are now really at time. But again, I really want to express my gratitude to you, Gabrielle, Kheir, Raquel, for your contributions, your time here with us at the Getty Research Institute for our Backstage program. And again, to everyone out there in the audience who attended, as well as my coworkers here at the Getty Research Institute, who continuously helps us to put on these successful backstage programs. Thank you again for all of your help. And I hope that everyone out there has a beautiful rest of your day. Take care and thank you again.